Lindsay, thanks for joining us. I would like to hear your thoughts on that leaders debate and how the idea for this collaboration came about.
Yeah, so I mean, like many people, I was watching that leaders debate, the English language debate, and just feeling frustrated by the responses. And the Discourse and APTN had partnered previously to work on a project called Tracking Trans Mountain, which was focused on listening to communities impacted by the Trans Mountain Pipeline project and finding out where they were at. So we knew that APTN was a great partner, and we really wanted to focus on what questions underserved communities had and what questions weren't being heard in this election cycle. And so we were able to pretty quickly come together and just ask that question.
APTNnews.ca published an op-ed by former Executive Director of News Karen Pugliese. In it, she said that the discussion would have been different had an Indigenous journalist been included to moderate. What did you hear generally from readers who shared their questions or concerns? And can you give us a couple of examples?
Yeah, so I think that the amazing thing when you ask the public what questions they have is you get really powerful answers and responses. And so I did pull up a couple here, and I think that they're pretty telling for anyone who didn't watch the debate. You know, it ended up just being a conversation mostly about pipelines, and Indigenous issues were categorized as one thing, and it was about the environment or it was about pipelines, and that was it. And the questions that came forward, one says here, you know, what does the Indian Act mean to you? I'd like to ask all candidates that. Or, you know, will you ensure that all recommendations of the TRC of the report on missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls are implemented? You know, how come constitutional genocide is never discussed? What will you do to address systemic racism in Canada? These are really big questions and tough questions that weren't really asked, or if asked, weren't answered.
What do you think the impact would have been if tough questions like that had been put to politicians ahead of the election?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you would have seen a campaign. It would have been nice to see a campaign that was built around policy and real discussions around issues impacting people's lives. And that's not the campaign that we've seen. We've seen very little conversations about the big issues and policies facing our time and our communities. And I think that, you know, if not an election, you know, when are we going to have these conversations? So I think that it could have been a different conversation, and I also think that moving forward, if you look at the questions that were asked, this is something that can be asked of whoever will be Prime Minister tomorrow.
Well, and I guess we'll find out very shortly who's going to be Prime Minister tomorrow. Lindsay, thanks so much for taking the time to share your thoughts with us.
Thank you.